for the UK, way ahead of the EU. Like the UK in 1910, 1920, very prominent Fabian socialists were at that time saying it's time to make alliances with Islam because we can change the face of the UK and Europe through Islam.
Right.
And so it became, a tool early on. First of all, not through the Wahhabi Salafi stuff, because if you tried to import that into the UK in the 1910s and 20s, it would have never worked. So what do? What's the Fabian model? A slow kill model.
Right.
Sunnis. We bring in the ecumenist, very perennialist minded Sunnis, the mystical Neoplatonic model.
Save them from persecution in the Middle East. Bring them to
They even brought these guys over. Ratio has some really great chapters in his book where they bring these intellectuals and they let them teach at Oxford and Cambridge. These intellectual Sufis then set up these missionary publishing societies. They start promoting Sufism throughout the UK in the 1910s, 20s, 30s. Then over time, you start bringing in the more radical Sunni Wahhabi type elements. That's where we are today, where you have Londonistan. But it's not accidental. People think that it's just liberals that are open borders. No, it's a specific strategy that many of the Fabian socialist elites said, we got to eradicate Christianity in the West and in Europe. And one of the best ways to do that would be to flood the UK and EU with Islam.
Right.
They're very candid about it.
So other than the ability to alter and augment European identity and culture, and then the radical violent elements of Islam, why are intelligence agencies so interested in manipulating and utilizing Islam? Are there other aspects of the paradigm, the worldview, that are very useful as a utility for people who are wanting to control and manipulate populations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could think immediately of, what Miles Copeland says is that he says Islam's a great religion for creating a terror patsy. I mean, you've got the ready-made idea going back to, the martyrdom idea that, oh, guess what? Die for this cause and you're going to get laid for eternity, right?
Right.
So that's a very powerful motivation for perhaps not just young men who are very manipulable, but even unstable people can very easily be used in this way. And again, that's what Miles Copeland actually explains in his biography about this. He says that, they make the perfect patsy when we want this kind of an event. So it doesn't mean that the CIA or British intelligence is behind every TERR event. It's not saying that at all. It's just saying that when it's useful, it's very useful for, as you pointed out, everything from a destabilizing force in a rival nation to just terrorizing a target population. It can also bring about the end legal changes that you want. So you want to have, body scanners at every airport.
Right.
Well, a giant T event would be great for that.
Right.
So there's a lot of different.
Right. And you had the subway bombing in London. I forget, was that the early 2000s. That was kind of like their 9/11 event that reorganized their society.
7/7, exactly. Great example. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was also mentioning, when you were talking about that, I was thinking that Islam is also so culturally cohesive that is another reason why it is such a useful weapon against Western nations is, the unity of Arabic. You can find, Buddhist traditions and they don't all speak the same language. They don't all come from the same culture, but Islam is sort of a submission to Arabism. And so it's filled with political and militaristic ideology in the name of religion. So it seems like it, as a paradigm, out of all the world religions, Islam is certainly the most useful if you want to sort of take control of.
It's a death cult. It's a model for creating a kind of a death cult type of thing. Absolutely. Great. That's a great point. I mean, even even a lot of the modern apologists critiquing Islam, whether it's David Wood or Sam Shamoon or Jay Smith, a lot of people who have critiqued it have noted that you can see early on in the Quran that before the later, battles that Muhammad engaged in, it's intended to be the revelation for Arab peoples. So in other words, at early points in the Quran, Allah speaks as if, well, the Jews have their Bible and the Christians have their thing. This is the thing for the Arabs, right? Mm-hmm. So it initially has this very ethno-nationalist, I guess you could say, vibe to it, before later on Muhammad says after certain battles, oh no, actually this is to take over the whole world now. So you can actually see an internal contradiction in the Quran itself, to where it moves from being just relative to the Arab peoples to, oh no, actually this is for everybody. Conquer everybody now.
Right. Now, how much influence, because you're talking about the earlier years of the British intelligence having to do with, the OPEC nations, oil, energy, how much influence do they still have in places like Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia? I mean, what in your perspective, what is that influence and relationship with British intelligence still?
I think that British intelligence has since the Cold War or earlier had what they call a special relationship with America. So they link up and they do things very closely. It's part of the, Five Eyes, Seven Eyes. These are the, right, Western sort of intelligence powers and structures that are united together. So I think the key thing to realize here is that, remember that for us in the West, there might be periods where we have some sort of disagreement with the UK or whatever, but the overlord oligarchic power structure is the same. It's the same upper level people that run both the US and the UK, and by extension the EU, because if you understand, the European Union itself was set up by the OSS and the CIA. It's literally a creation of the OSS and CIA. This is the post Tiny Mustache Man. After he loses, OSS and CIA comes in and literally sets up all that. In fact, they even brainwash the Germans with re-education camps. So we think of that as a Soviet communist thing. No, actually the CIA set up, I'm serious, they set up re-education camps for Germans after World War II. So, you've got this elite corporate banking structure, I believe, that is what Quigley calls the, Atlanticist East Anglo-American establishment. And that includes the nation state of Israel, so I'm not excluding them. Mm-hmm. And they still see, certain places like Russia, maybe Iran to some degree. I'm iffy on how much I think Iran is a real threat or not. But I think they do see these, the way that Brzezinski said, we have to make sure that there could never be any potential threat or challenge to Atlanticist dominance, and thus control of Eurasia, according to Brzezinski, was the key means to that. Hence why for them Ukraine is so important, because that's essential to Western NATO dominance in the Eurasian heartland.